Among those who know the truth of things, it is widely understood that the Sixth Gun vanished after the war. Some believe it was shattered to bits when General Oleander Bedford Hume was killed during the raising of Devil's Forks. Others believe something as vile as the gun couldn't ever be destroyed. Today on the Comic Book Report, The Sixth Gun Omnibus, Volume 1. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm excited to finally talk about a series that I absolutely could not put down from Oni Press. That's right, we're looking at Cullen Bunn's The Sixth Gun. This was not only a work I wanted to try out, but an author I really wanted to delve deeper into. And I had an absolute blast with this series. In fact, I've read all three of the omnibus editions, these paperbacks here, and I also read the fourth volume, the Shadow Roads Omnibus. So if you like this video, definitely stay tuned to the channel because I plan to review the additional 3 volumes. Now, The Sixth Gun is a Western horror dark fantasy series, and frankly, I just can't wait to start talking about it. So right now, a huge thank you for Oni Press for sending over this review copy in exchange for a review, and let's go ahead and just get started. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written primarily by Cullen Bunn and illustrated primarily by Brian Hurtt. The comics in this volume were published by Oni Press beginning in 2010. The volume itself collects The Sixth Gun, issues 1 through 17, The Sixth Gun, Sons of the Gun, issues 1 through 5, and The Sixth Gun, Them's What Ails Ya. And finally, this is a standard-size paperback edition with glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 568 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that standard size paperback omnibus edition from Oni Press, and I will say right from the jump, I really like the design work we have for this collection and all the other subsequent collections in this line. We have this kind of beautiful, stylized, ornate framing in black and white, and then a little picture window with just enough of the art to kind of tease the collection. I really like it, and there's some really great uniformity with all the collections. I'll actually show all of the collections in this line later in the video. Looking at the spine, I really like this design as well. We have the creators, we have a little skull, we have the stylization of the Sixth Gun, the font, the volume number, the publisher, and just black with white text. I just think it really, really pops. Again, it looks really great on a bookcase, and I do like the uniformity that Oni Press saw fit to give all of these volumes. Making our way to the back cover, we have more of that kind of black and white framing. We have a little bit of these kind of runes or symbols as well, blurbs about the book, what it collects, pricing, things like that. I would say I would have loved to see a little bit more actual art from the book on the back here, but I do think what they chose for design work here is still really beautiful. Like I said, I think they have a design kind of motif or idea or look for this set, and I think it really looks striking. Again, that uniformity is not to be beat. And for all you prospective collectors out there, I did want to do a quick look at the binding for this paperback. So it is a glued binding and at a pretty hefty size. I wasn't sure what it would look like as far as gutter loss, but I'm happy to say it is pretty minimal. It opens up quite well. A lot of the artwork has these white borders, so we don't lose too much to the gutter, especially if you press down a bit. If anything, the binding is a little tight, but it does loosen up with reading. Okay, and as promised, before we jump into the actual book itself, I wanted to do a look at this whole run of books that Oni Press released in this format. So we have all 3 volumes of these paperback omnibuses for Sixth Gun, along with the Shadow Roads Omnibus, which is a smaller additional paperback that serves as kind of a sequel to the main series. But more on Shadow Roads once I get to that review, hopefully sometime in the coming weeks. But as I've discussed, you can see the uniformity they went for here with the collections. I love how similar they all look. I love that we get different pictures for each of the volume numbers here, and overall just very, very striking. As you can see, the spine work as well, really uniform and detailed. Everything looks really great. I love the attention to detail here from Oni Press. having read this whole series and as fast as I did devour it, I think my only real desire here is we had this exact same edition, but just in an oversized hardcover, more prestigious format. I know they made those in the past. They've done other releases of Sixth Gun, but I believe most of those hardcovers are out of print. But you can still find these omnibuses available at the time of this recording, and the just general smaller trade paperback run. Okay, and with that, let's go ahead and dive in. As you can see, we have a nice title page, publication information page, creator breakdown page, and then a beautiful, fully numbered table of contents. Absolutely brilliant here. And then after that, we have a chapter break page, and then we're into the issue 1 of The Sixth Gun. I should say at this point, unfortunately, these omnibus editions do not include the covers. We don't have any covers for this whole run, or the variant covers, anything like that. There is a small little bit of extras in the form of, I think, creator bios at the back of the collection, but other than that, we don't really have any real extras in these omnibus paperbacks. And I think that about covers the build of the book, a quick look at it, the format, things like that. And now let's go ahead and transition to the actual storytelling. What is The Sixth Gun? Well, as we jump right in, I will say, again, this is a dark fantasy, western horror series. It has a ton of action, violence, I believe maybe a little bit profanity here and there. There's no real intense scene of sexuality, not a ton of nudity or anything like that. It's not really that explicit in that way. Maybe a couple like slight partial nudities or monster nudity, but nothing super crazy. But yeah, it's mostly action based, I would say, as far as explicit materials here, and just also kind of darker themes, I would say. But yeah, basically the Sixth Gun all revolves around the mythology of, well, you guessed it, 6 guns. And all 6 of these guns kind of have a magic power. Their origin is initially unknown. As far as what their ultimate function is, it's also kind of unknown at the beginning. All we really know is that these guns have power, and people are trying to collect them. We have kind of a bad faction that's trying to collect them to perhaps end the world, change the world, rule the world, or something. And then we have the side of right, hopefully trying to destroy the guns if they can without getting corrupted by them. The story really begins on a small farmhouse where basically an old man is laying dying. His loving daughter is kind of tending to him, and he's basically has a dying wish saying, you know, I hope to never involve you in this. Go get this box. As soon as I die, please throw this box into the deepest part of the lake and just never address it again. Don't let anyone see you do it. And as he's explaining this, all of a sudden gunfire goes into the house. The old man passes away. The box opens up and it's an old revolver. The young daughter picks up the gun and something crazy happens. She's blood sealed to this gun, and she just starts firing. We find out that the gun is a magic gun. It's actually the 6th of these 6 guns that all have different abilities. We find out pretty soon that this gun has the ability to kind of give visions of the future or through time. There's more developments on this throughout the series, but that is this gun's ability, is to kind of see the future or see through time, or give visions at the very least. Like all the other magic guns, it also never needs to reload. It has like unlimited ammo, but basically she doesn't know any of that at the time. Basically she just grabs it, sees something weird, it frightens her, and she's just in the middle of this wild shootout. We have these other factions basically trying to hone in on where this gun goes to. The people that survive this encounter realize that she has now taken the gun, and we learn early on that another aspect to the overall kind of mythos of the 6 guns is that every time someone has the gun, it is theirs until they die. And then the first person to touch the gun seals to them. And anyone else who tries to touch the gun will burn away in kind of evil fire and just kind of burn away to ashes. So she doesn't know this, but now the gun is tied to her. As far as the rest of this omnibus goes, it has the first couple story arcs. A thing I like about this edition as well is in the upper right hand pages in the kind of header, we have the name of the overall story arc. I think these are also broken down by what you would have gotten in maybe trade paperbacks. So we have a couple different arcs in this early omnibus here, which I love to see. That was a great way to punctuate all of it. Of course that, and then the chapter break pages. And then of course we have a 5-issue miniseries at the back of the book, along with a quick kind of partial prose, partial image kind of story to round out the whole collection. But yeah, in these early issues, we basically get to know our central cast of characters, which include this young daughter who becomes really the main character of the series. This is Becky Moncrief. We also have a dashing rogue kind of anti-hero character who's one of our main characters as well, in the form of Drake Sinclair. We know in the beginning he's just searching for the Sixth Gun, which he believes will grant him access to a vault of this old Confederate general who had all of these guns, him and his kind of upper generals during the Civil War. This evil general, General Hume, was kind of this monstrous evil man who he had the Sixth Gun, the one Becky now possesses, back in the Civil War. He died during the war, I believe, and all of his generals are still running around with the remaining guns, and Drake is trying to hunt them down to try to find this treasure trove, at least presumably. So he kind of clashes with Becky along the way, and we have them kind of fighting off the remaining sort of lieutenants for this general. And along the way, we also have this kind of resurrection plot line where they believe they can bring General Hume back, or he's kind of in this partial death state, and they believe with all of them together, with all of his lieutenants, kind of his horsemen rather, they can basically usher in maybe the end of the world, or kind of just continue growing their power. Along the way, we do also get to know a little bit more about the gun's different powers. Like there's one gun that brings just crazy fire everywhere it goes. There's one that just every shot is super powerful, like cannon fire, just blows everything to pieces. We have one that just is pestilence. It gives everyone kind of a flesh-eating disease that just consumes them right away. Another one, anyone you've killed with the gun, it kind of brings them back as kind of clay golem-like creatures. And then there's one gun that lets you recover from any kind of wound. It can keep you youthful, things like that. Anyway, these are really the guns that are in play here. We have the lieutenants at the start of the series having all the guns, basically, except for the Sixth Gun, and then the old general's wife having the one that keeps her from harm and keeps her youthful. Toward the end of the first large story arc, we have Drake and Becky confront a lot of the old general's men, and we have him basically acquiring, I think, 3 or 4 of the guns right from the jump. So we have him, it must be 4, because he has 4, Becky has 1, and then the only one they don't have for a while, I believe, is this one that's with the general's wife. So they basically find out that there's this huge treasure, but it's not what they believed it would be. It actually is this dark vault, and it actually needs all 6 guns to unlock it. And we don't know exactly what that looks like, but we know that that is really what the forces of evil are trying to do. Another thing about these guns that I really like, part of the mythos here, is it's kind of like Lord of the Rings in that the ring of power corrupts anyone who is bearing it, and after a while it begins to change them and kind of bring out the darker sides of their nature. And that is something we see with the guns. The more their presence is around, they're kind of drawn to evil, and they begin to change the owner and kind of twist them in ways if they're not careful. And so that's kind of an all-pervading thing in the background of the series, and I really enjoyed seeing that. We also acquire some more secondary characters. One of my favorites is this character Gord. He has a pretty checkered past, but he is sort of a borderline mythical character. He's also sort of their researcher and planner in a lot of ways. The 3 of them basically get into more kind of dangerous hunting, trying to find more information about the Sixth Gun. He's trying to find these journals that might have things about their origins or how to destroy them. Along the way, we also find all of these other factions that are trying for the guns, like the Sword of Abraham, and there's some organization, I think something of Solomon, but there's all these warring factions that have been trying to protect the guns or destroy the guns or save the world from the guns or things like that. And anyway, these early story arcs are all really fun. They're all really foundational with the characters, but I like that each individual story arc had its own kind of beginning, middle, and end, and just enough connective tissue that you're eager to go into the next arc and the next adventures with all of these characters. The last main arc we get in this book before we go over into the miniseries is this arc called Bound, and this was one that I thought was really interesting. We have Becky kind of taken in by the Sword of Abraham folks, who at first look like a kind of monastic order that's trying to prevent the guns from taking over and ending the world, and we think that they're trying to help Becky, but it turns out she's more or less a prisoner, and she has to actually use more of the power of the gun to kind of help her escape. This is where we get, again, a little bit more about about what's going on with the Sixth Gun, everything it can do, why it may or may not be one of the most powerful of the Six Guns. And we also, in the same time, in this story arc, we have Gord, who again is one of my favorite secondary characters. He finds this old estate house, this old kind of plantation house, and we find out that this is actually where he's used to be a slave, actually, and we learn about how the Six Guns came into this world. We learn some of the origins, which is all what he was seeking. There's almost a ghost story element to this story arc too, which I thought was fascinating and kind of riveting. I think that this is really what cemented him for me as one of the main characters that I really enjoyed reading. I can't tell you how much this story really affected me earlier in this run, and I just really enjoyed it. Like I said, this is sort of the last main arc of those initial 17 issues. And then at the end of the collection, we get into that mini-series, Sons of the Gun, and the kind of novel approach for this 5-issue miniseries is that this is all focused around General Hume's horsemen, or kind of lieutenant characters. Each of them ultimately got kind of one of the guns, and we get more of their backstory, and some of them are tragic, some of them are vile, but all of them are really interesting. We get to see how each of their individual guns kind of help shape them, and how they use them in different ways to different ends. Like, we have the guys that had the gun that basically created the golems from anyone that he killed. We had him kind of being a revival tent kind of person, and it was just really insidious and odd. We had the guy that could spread disease, kind of really, really trippy. I don't know. I don't want to spoil too much here, but the Sons of a Gun was definitely interesting. I would say in some ways that felt a little bit darker because we didn't have some of our series, I'm going to call them heroes or main kind of light characters. We're following a lot of the villains, and I felt that in that miniseries. But I do think this helped pad out the mythos and the world, and I did love that they included it in this omnibus. I think mapping it at the end as well made a lot of sense, because by the time you get to it, you definitely have a functional understanding of a lot of these characters, so you can kind of backfill a lot of their storylines after you read this miniseries and be like, oh yeah, I see how that fits, or now I know a little bit more about this character or that character. And overall, like I said, I think it's a great inclusion for this omnibus. After the first 17 issues of Sixth Gun, along with that Sons of the Gun miniseries, we just have the last little story here that feels like a bonus. It actually wasn't even included in the table of contents. This is Them That Ails Ya, I think it was. This is mostly prose. It's kind of set earlier in the history of some of these characters, and it gives surprising amounts of context or details that I thought were quite fun. It was also nice to see some written prose in this omnibus. It made it feel like it had a little bit more variety. We also have a couple pictures here, which are nice to see, and really after this little story we have just this small collection of extras in the form of creator bios. We have a little picture window for some of the creators here, along with little blurbs about each of them. But that's really it here. I would have loved to see some cover art. I would have loved to see even more extras. Like I said, I would have loved if they reprinted this in like an oversized hardcover edition, but I think for what we get here, especially for the price point, this is an absolute slam dunk. Absolutely love this series. Like I said, well bound, well put together, and this is one of the most engaging series I've read in a long time. Of course, there are even more plot details. I couldn't hit everything, and honestly, I wanted to keep it a little bit lighter here in that department because I'm hoping more people will seek this out and read it without having too many spoilers from me. But that has been the Sixth Gun Omnibus Volume 1 from Oni Press. I think all that's left to do now is to give this book a grade. For easily the most engaging Western horror comic I've ever read, and one of the most fun and just binge-worthy series I've read in the comic book medium in some time, The Sixth Gun by Cullen Bunn and Brian Hurtt is an absolute triumph, and for this reason, I have to give this Paperback Omnibus Volume 1 an A. Really happy to say that here. This was a must-read for me, especially if you like these genres. It was really great, didn't overstay its welcome, well-paced with really likable characters, dialogue works all there. I think the art style was so fitting and genuinely gorgeous for this world. I couldn't wait to jump into the subsequent collections. In fact, I read them all end to end to end. I can't wait to talk more about them on the channel in the coming weeks. If you're interested, definitely stay tuned. Let me know in the comments what you think of The Sixth Gun or any other works from Cullen Bunn. Again, a huge thank you to those at Oni Press for providing this review copy in exchange for the review, and a big thank you to everyone else for just watching. I appreciate all of you, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, your comment, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks, and have a good one.